And welcome back to the Tech for Impact showcase here at the Doconomy stage of impact during the World Economic Forum. Once again, quite a mouthful. Very excited to be here today on the third day. Today we are bringing some amazing startups in the space of representation, inclusion, and mental health. My name is Michelle. I am the CMO and the managing partner at Tenity. And before we get into the thick of things and before we get to meet the startups, I'd like to introduce Andreas Itten. He's Tenity's CEO and will give you a very quick introduction.
Thank you very much, Michelle. So good morning, everyone here. And Davos Day 3, again, great day with a lot of super cool presentations. Today's showcase, so a quick word about Tenity. We are a global innovation ecosystem and early stage investor with the ambition to create the future of finance. So very specialized on the sector of finance and insurance, and everything related to impact and sustainability is obviously also something we cover. We operate I would say, broad ecosystem globally with three main stakeholders. On the one hand, startups. So we help startups to grow fast. We do that with capital. So we also invest in those companies and obviously also with a lot of sweat. So we basically coach and mentor startups throughout a whole program which we run in the different locations where we are present. This is Zurich, where we run one incubator, Singapore, and Tallinn in Estonia. Then we also, our ecosystem consists of a lot of corporate partners, such as UBS, for instance. There we do a lot of matchmaking between startups and financial institutions, helping them to get access to startup innovation and use them as multipliers and to scale those things up. And then last but not least, obviously, we have a very big co-investor network, which co-invests into companies from our portfolio. That's a global co-investor network of those investors who are focusing on the industries where we are active in. Maybe some numbers from Tenity. We have been kind of founded back in 2015. Originally, we are a spin-off from the Swiss Stock Exchange. In the meantime, independent. We have like 50 people in the overall global organization, which is kind of a great team helping all those stakeholders to create value. There was quite some money syndicated for our startups, over 1 billion. We did more than 250 investments in the past already with our funds we have. With the new fund, we invest in another 300. So we very much believe in helping and supporting a lot of startups. So that's a bit, about our investment thesis. So why we are here with the kind of tech showcase, I think the topic is super relevant, and also to disclose that we are an investor in Doconomy. So that's the way how we usually actually collaborate and add value to our portfolio companies. We do such kind of events together. And I think it's a very relevant topic for the World Economic Forum. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Andy. All right, so let's get into the topic of today. Actually, this week we are bringing a total of 15 amazing tech companies, startups, to Davos. We're very excited that today we are focusing on representation, inclusion, mental health. I think, very, very important and relevant topic in today's world. And yeah, thank you so much also again to Doconomy and to UBS and all the other partners that actually make this week possible. Very excited to collaborate and to also give the stage to the next generation and inspiring founders that will show us the way today. All right, so let's get right in. I would, very honored to introduce our first startup of today, which is SmartPurse. We have here Olga Miller and Jude Kelly, co-founders of SmartPurse, and I would ask you to come on stage. I think we have to sit.
So, good morning. I'm Jude Kelly. I'm currently cultural leader in residence for the World Economic Forum for this week, which is a privilege. I'm a woman, and I know a lot about women.
Yes, hello everybody, and I'm Olga Miller. I'm a woman in finance, and I know obviously a lot about money and about women as well, a little bit.
And so together we founded SmartPurse, but we have a third person we want to introduce you to as well, called Chloe. I'd like you to meet her. Do you want to tell us a bit? She's not here in person, but she's very much here in our minds and our hearts.
Yeah, absolutely, and maybe some of you know a Chloe or even feel like a Chloe today, but de facto Chloe is 35 years old and she is just expecting her first child, lives in Switzerland, therefore going to work part-time, and has absolutely no idea what to do with her finances. She is very representative to the approximately 10,000 women that I teach every year about what to do more with their money. And one response that usually shines through is, bloody hell, somebody should have taught us this stuff at school. Right? I would have been so grateful to know.
So that is really, I suppose, why we started SmartPurse. Because if you look at these statistics, it isn't just Chloe. 51% globally don't reach even the basic score of financial literacy. And that equals the fact that in terms of mental health, stress, productivity, we reckon that 13 hours of productivity is lost per employee per month because people are worried about money, and in particular, women are worried about money. And 63% rate their understanding of the possibility of investment as really poor. Because we're not interested in women just sort of saving and saving themselves from financial jeopardy. We want women to be active in the financial markets and for them to believe that there is a route map from total ignorance to agency and excitement about money.
And speaking of representation, naturally knowledge drives action. And when it comes to finance, it drives action big time. You see here a statistic again from Switzerland, where de facto 1/3 of men is actually saying, well, I consider myself to be good with my finances. Fewer women are, but the men get on with it. And when it then comes to all the young people that keep their savings money on their savings account and don't invest it and don't do anything with it, speaking of a huge retirement gap that we all will be facing, because with a life expectancy up to almost 100, right, our money has to do very different things to finance a very, very different life. So we firmly believe that financial education, financial knowledge is the key to solve many societal problems that we are facing on the planet today. And if that money is then also invested with a purpose, naturally also to do a lot of good with that money.
Mm-hmm. And so this is the point. At the moment, you're probably familiar with all the books, the ways that you can learn about money, and they're nearly all led by the idea that if you're a man, if you're a boy, then this is your journey. But hardly ever are you going to see yourself as a woman represented in this area. And yet, we earn money, we hold on to money, we do the house money, etc. So there is a huge gap in the market for the idea of communicating about money to women. And of course, the men who might want to find out about money as well, it gives them a softer entrance as well, because let's face it, lots of men need to pretend they know about money when actually they're scared too.
So we set out to change this paradigm. Me having worked in a big bank, women always said, we wish there was a place where we could discuss these things. And we set out to change it in a very unique way. Not just build out or write a book about finance or showcase a couple of women or build an app. The challenge that we set ourselves was, can we build a platform that will be globally relevant, but where people can consume local content? So if you are a woman from Dubai or from Switzerland, your retirement systems will be very different. You still want to learn. Can we build a venture that is designed by women, but actually welcoming to all? By now, the young people come our way. A lot of people in their 70s come our way to learn how to invest, right? And can we make all of this financial education financially viable without having to take advertising money or rely on a financial services provider, because we do not want to become a bank? And what has come out of this is actually SmartPurse.
There is an issue of trust between the consumer and the financial services, and particularly women don't feel as if they can trust because the language hasn't been built with them in mind. And so this idea of SmartPurse being independent for everyone, giving them, if you like, the route map for how they can feel as if they can eventually end up, of course, discussing with financial institutions, financial advisors, but when they feel they have knowledge to bring to the table. That's what we're doing. So it's learning, it's planning, and then it's growing. We're not just about financial inclusion, we're actually about financial action. We do really believe in investment because we want women to influence what investment looks like, and also the growth potential across the world is absolutely incredible and undervalued at the moment.
And the whole thing functions like a platform, as you see here. So it provides financial education as a service, developed by women for the benefit of all. We work with corporates to create financial education programs. We have a huge web platform, we have an app, we have a metaverse, we have an AI chat. You can think of this as a huge financial education competence center where corporates come together, where financial services comes to have us develop their financial education with an inclusive angle in mind and not just developed for a unilateral audience, which in this case would be men. And we test all of this on a group of 10,000 end users. Okay, so our B2C leg is de facto our test and learn lab. This whole thing has been incredibly impactful. Here you see some results, how people learn. Maybe to share one statistic, 7 out of 10 of our users really start to invest. Okay, show me something that will get you there faster. We are very convinced that this is really working. Have we been getting some traction? Yes, this B2B2C model, fantastic. For us, 2023 has been a stellar year. So we by now have over 30 corporates linked to the platform. We have financial services using us as kind of a competence center. So for us, it's really an interesting thing, and we're very grateful to be here today to present you all with this opportunity.
I mean, we also want money to be fun, and that is the point, right? It doesn't need to be dry, it doesn't need to be terrorizing, it can actually be exciting. And I think that once women get the hang of that and they feel it's something that is for them, then if you remember the revolution that happened with sport, with yoga, with anything to do with health, women have went on that journey and they've taken over that industry, and it's going to be the same for money, believe me.
And speaking of fun, for this year we are experimenting making finance fun, so with the intersection of finance and humor and how far you can go. One of our new features now launching next week is people can earn rewards and then trade these rewards. We're going to have some comedians explain financial terms, so people who have no idea about what money is all about, they will explain it, and naturally experimenting with AI. And that basically brings us to all of you. If you are in the camp of empowering your workforce, or you are a financial services provider that wants to develop financial education that actually hits the mark and helps people, then we are the people to speak to, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Thanks very much for listening to us, and I look forward to perhaps working in partnership.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the great presentation. My question is related to the emotional aspect. We're all emotional beings, even when it comes to our finances. So I'm curious, in addition to the education and financial literacy that you're addressing, how do you go about addressing the emotional aspect of financial well-being?
Well, I would say that actually, particularly for women, it starts with emotion. You know, you mentioned money to lots of women. Actually, their body language changes as they gasp with a bit of anxiety. And I think there's a history of women and money, which is that traditionally and still in some cultures, money hasn't belonged to money. To women, they haven't felt as if they're central to it. And there's a lot of anxiety about how you plan, not just inside the kind of confines of your family, but you know the average age for divorce is 47, and you know a lot of women end up being single parent. How do they cope with all of those things? So we basically don't just deal with factual information, we deal with the psychology of money as well as the realities of what you do. And they have to blend together, those things. They're not separate.
And the way we do it very, very practically is we teach courses we run events, we have people pairing up as money buddies, we run challenges, so anything that kind of speaks to bringing people together to unlock that conversation is very much part of our DNA, as is the tech and all the great stuff that we've been talking about just in this presentation. And when we started out this way, actually, both investors and kind of supporters declared us a little crazy, and they said, why would you need all these courses? Shouldn't you be digital, scalable, all that? It's not how people deal with money. People learn about money in a multi-channel, multifaceted way, and you actually need to have all of these different touch points to inspire them to act, right? Not everybody starts to invest just because they saw a great Instagram post.
Thank you very much for a brilliant presentation and a very important topic, I believe, in regard of getting change done and running this world at full capacity instead of just the 50% of the nutcases messing it up so far. So with that said, is it 63% of women feel that they are not educated in regard of finance? They feel that they're not educated. Is that true? I mean, compared to their male peers, they are much lower numbers. So they're like, you know, I can turn this machine on. I don't need any instructions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, there's always a kind of blag gap, isn't there? Men are encouraged to be confident that they can say they know more than they do, and women are frightened to say even what they do know, in case they are accused of being wrong or just boastful. So there is this credibility gap. But also what that means is that when you talk about money to women, they draw away because they say, well, I know nothing about it. Whereas a man will go, well, I don't know much about it, but I'm going to. So 63% is what people say, but I think you can take that as, therefore, how they act.
Yeah.
And what would be, sorry to interrupt, what would be the this? Is it 63%? To your experience, when you're running these events and educations, and you must many times, I believe, conclude that, but you know this, you know, it's just a self-esteem effort or a.
So I think from my experience in the courses and how people learn, about 1/3 of participants that come have absolutely no clue. Okay, 1/3 has some clue about finance but is not able to handle the digital. So it's one thing knowing in theory, the other thing is being able to depict which one is the right provider for me, how much is the product costing me, is this the right product, how do I read a bloody fact sheet, all these graphs and charts, right? We teach very practical hands-on finance, and that is, I think, what gives people then this ability to act. And to your point around the women kind of believe that they are not educated, it doesn't matter whether they are or not, because this sheer belief will blocking them from action. So in many cases, what happens is people write to me and say, hey, Olga, I'm thinking about this product. What do you think of it? And I say, hey, actually, it's a cool product. And that's all they needed. No education has happened, okay? Just somehow some perceived authority, in this case being us, says, go for it. And then it happens. Probably that is also where the 72% of starting to invest come from.
Yeah, and so actually we see that women leap from I know nothing to how do I get involved in crypto? I mean, they leap. It's amazing. But I want to say something else about knowledge and statistics and how we do it. So if I send my partner out to go and get, you know, X number of baked beans and X number of flour, and I say measurements, he will come back with all the wrong products. If I ask him, guilty, okay, to go and buy shoes for the children or clothes for the children, women are used to looking at measurements and scoring and graph. They can do all of that for the things that they know about. So it's just swapping the realization that they can grapple this information. It's just they've never been encouraged to.
Thank you so much. Thank you, SmartPurse. Huge round of applause. Oops. Once again. Next up, we are talking about financial inclusivity. I am very excited to introduce you to the CEO and founder at CWALLET. He is hailing from Qatar. Thank you so much for coming here. And he'll talk about, his name is Michael Javier, if I say this correctly, and I would love to hand over directly to him.
Hello everyone, my name is Michael and I'm the CEO and founder of CWALLET. And we're on a mission to empower societies and reduce inequality, not only through financial technology or financial literacy, but also through financial diversification. I'm not nervous, I was running because delayed. I thought I would miss it. I flew all the way from Doha to miss this opportunity. So a bit about my story. It was 2006 when I first arrived in the Middle East, a typical expat looking for a greener pasture in the desert. During that period, I couldn't open up my bank account because my salary was below $1,000. Now, fast forward 2024, almost 2 decades later, our very loving nanny is still unbanked. She couldn't purchase from an e-commerce platform because she doesn't have a credit card, and she is deprived to borrow money because she doesn't have a credit score. And you can see from her face because she's all stressed out to send money home because everything is closed on her day off, which is Friday in the Middle East most of the time. And she's not alone. There's about 35 million migrant workers in GCC, Gulf Cooperating countries, including Jordan and Lebanon, out of which 1/3 or 31% are women. Now, with 540 billion remittance flow to low and middle income countries, those individuals are considered heroes of their family for being breadwinners and heroes of their economy. That is the same reason why we created CWALLET. So we're promoting financial diversification starting from the beginning. We're allowing our users to receive their salary on time so they can conduct online and offline transactions and ultimately send money home anytime, anywhere, with any currency. Most of you will ask what is C stands for. It's actually crypto, but it's deemed illegal where I'm coming from. So we were the very first crypto wallet in MENA. But it was on hold. When I was called by the central bank, I almost had a heart attack. Shut it down. But the beauty with Doha, they allowed the entrepreneur to flourish. So it actually took me 4 years, 9 months, and 15 hours to get the license and our first remittance. But beyond that, we would like them to also borrow, earn, save, and invest for their future. So if I will ask everyone in the room, this is what happens. So the great-grandmother was domestic helper. The grandmother was domestic helper. The mother was a domestic helper. Can anyone guess what happens to the daughter or the grandchildren? Sorry to, how do you say it in English? Disappoint you. But because of CWALLET, now they can be whatever they want. Because we're trying to break the generations of migrants. We want them to become entrepreneurs. We want them to become doctors, nurses, ambassadors, participants in World Economic Forum. Because we're trying to change the way they perceive their well-being. So we want to uplift their lives through learning and financial, how they use and spend their money. At the end of the day, we can only do good if we're doing well. So our business model is 40% profit sharing on remittance. That's about 2% commission on merchant transactions and service charge in our marketplace. Now, the beauty with the marketplace is I can order food, medicine, and grocery in the Philippines and pay from the Middle East. Of course, we're not alone, and we're in fact competing with the giant telcos like Vodafone and Uridu Money. But what makes us different is cross-border banking, wallet as a service, and our send now, pay later approach. Send now, pay later means, again, as an example in the Philippines, we are accustomed to 15 and 30. So every 15th of the month is the first salary, and then 30th on the end of the month. That's why when you go to Middle East, where it's like one full month, at the 25th, 26th, 27th, we call it Pecha de Peligro. So it's where this is where all the eggs are being cooked and instant noodles. But the problem, the family back home is waiting. So we want to give them a minimum so that they can pay in advance. Because the problem, if the water and electricity or the utilities are cut, it is actually more costly because they have to pay the reconnection fee, disconnection fee from the mountain to the city. So there's a lot of expenses occurred. So this is what we're trying to provide. Yes, we're licensed by Qatar Central Bank and we're PCI DSS compliant, so we spend numerous amount of money in just being compliant. And we have the biggest partners, the largest bank in Middle East in Africa. Visa invested about $21 million of 5-year investment commitment. It is the biggest fintech deal in MENAT, including Turkey. Microsoft has published our story on their website. I think in Bill and Gates Foundation as well, and we're partnered with the largest exchange house also in the Middle East. We got the license May, we went live September last year. So fortunately, we jumped in from $0 to $1 million. We're covering about 165 countries, serving 30 different nationalities, and we already have 4 acquisition offers, including from a company that looks and sounds like us. But we didn't sell because we know that the purpose is to kill, not continue the mission. Sometimes it's not all about the money, so that they say. So this is the dream team. All men, no women, unfortunately. It's very difficult to look for talent for a 2 million population market. So we're trying to bring in individuals that can actually help the company grow. And I told my HR, no more men. So we need the diversity also, not for the purpose of saying, but I think we know that it will bring a different point of view as well. So these are the original founders. You probably see there's 6.5 Qataris in the picture. We started as classmates in HEC. After a Europe trip, we became friends and now business partners. Nonetheless, they are more on early stage investor and partner, so to speak. And we've raised about $3 million in total funding. More of them are grants, bootstrap, no VC money yet. Thank you, Tenity, for being part of the support as well. These are a couple of achievements that we have just reached. Signing up ceremonies with the largest bank, Microsoft. We won FinTech Awards. I pitched CWALLET during the United Nations Migration Review Forum, organized by the President of United Nations General Assembly. We're part also of Village Capital, Companies Creating Change. We're the winners of Global Entrepreneurship Migration Awards. As you say, also was nominated as KPMG twice in a year. We won FT Migration Entrepreneurs Prize, and even Her Highness Sheikh Hamosa posted our story in her LinkedIn page. So I was here yesterday, and I was watching those amazing startups that saves land, air, reef, and I'm really blown away what they do. And then I just tried to assess that, according to Ban Ki-moon, saving our planet, lifting people out of poverty, advancing economic growth, these are all the same fight. Solutions to the problem must be solutions for all. So humans themselves will actually help change the perception in climate change, artificial intelligence. And mind you, there are 4th world countries that haven't heard of AI because they don't have electricity. So thank you very much for listening. And I think, yes, we can with CWALLET.
Thank you so much. Open for questions.
I have a question about logistics. So you reach out to people who don't actually have a lot of contact with banking, etc. So if there is a domestic worker in South Africa who needs something like this, how would you reach them?
Thank you for the question. We try to approach embassies because this is the easiest access to nationals, especially where I'm coming from. You know, it's a bit conservative. I cannot just go to a domestic helper and say, CWALLET. So we approach the embassy. What they like is the transparency, because when a migrant worker abscond from work, there are terms run away, but I was ridiculed by my mentor. Said, no, Michael, runaway are for slaves. When they abscond from work and they said they are not paid on time or for 6 months, there is no proof or evidence because the salary payment are cash. So with us, it will be digital, meaning the employee and the employer can either, and the embassies can whitelist individuals and companies that are treating their citizens well. So if we want to tap into a bigger group of domestic helpers, it has to go through an embassy. It should be a political will and support. But on the marketing side, when we did one Instagram post for an Indian influencer, because we are now the cheapest in the market, and I think it's the plan is successful because everyone is lowering their fee, including Western Union. So the influencer actually attract those individuals that has access to the mobile phones, and the embassies is taking time because of the bureaucracy things that they have to do.
Thank you for the great presentation and thank you for the impactful work that you're doing. You said you went live in September. What is the feedback that you have been receiving from your customers so far? And how do you make sure that you stay close to your customers long term?
The first complaint was it's very difficult to sign in because the EKYC has to be in place, regulatory purposes. They have to put their Qatar ID, take a picture of the front ID, it has to be extracted, they cannot edit it. And in technology, sometimes it's a third-party provider, so we're scanning. Imagine, I'm in Doha in 2006, it's the same picture. And even my director from Egypt came with muscle after 6 years, now he's bald. So sometimes technology doesn't recognize because people change. And worst case is someone altered something, then it's a complete confusion on the system. Nonetheless, we're trying to tell them that, again, through those influencers, the reason why we're asking them to provide, because it's for their protection also. That is the main key. But once they're on board, everything is easy, because it will almost be the same beneficiary. My mom sent $400, finished. So the most difficult part is to onboard. But once they're in, it's easy. Now, to keep them is another task because, as I mentioned, we are the cheapest. So everyone in the market is now doing a price war with us. And my social impact side is celebrating. My investors are raising their eyebrows. When are we going to make money? So I told them we have to balance. Because the difference is, even my father, he said, why will I use CWALLET? So I gave him an argument, Mr. Javier. For the last 33 years, because he was working abroad also, not a single happy birthday from Western Union. Not a single happy birthday. So I told him, in CWALLET, I will even tell you, Mr. Javier, tomorrow is your wedding anniversary. There's a 30% discount on your favorite flower shop. You order now, I give you one more chocolate. Of course, data privacy is there, GDPR, we have to consider all of this. But it's publicly available. In Asia, we want to be greeted in our birthday. We post that we are celebrating anniversary, so it's accessible. So it's just a matter of permit, because we want to have loyal fans rather than just same users. So because once we have loyal fans, they will wear the same T-shirt that I'm wearing, and they will be there. It's like FC Barcelona or whatever. You will wear the brand, and you will fight for the brand, and you will endorse the brand. So this is the route that we're trying to go for. Profitability, I haven't seen in my horizon yet. That's for sure. But it will come. It will come. Once they are loyal, I think they are willing to pay extra. That's why those jerseys of basketballs are pretty much 300% markup, and fans are still buying on it. So that's we're trying to hold on as a concept.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to language and the power of language and inclusion. I'm really excited to introduce Nadia Fischer, CEO at Witty Works.
Thank you. Yes, I want to talk about financial inclusion. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Witty Works, and we're making sure that the workplace gets more inclusive. Well, look at this picture. I know this is some time ago, it's 2014, but actually in many companies it's still, the management boards still look quite the same. And diversity and equity and inclusion has become a must nowadays. It's not a should have anymore, actually, but it's really a must in the 21st century because our economy gets globalized, more diverse, and also for different reasons that have been found out in different studies. So first is that DEI, the abbreviation, is actually one of the top 10 trends that have a global impact over the next 50 years. So it won't go away. Just like digitalization, diversity won't go away. Second is that there are many laws coming out now. The Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive now in the EU, companies must report about diversity and must tell what they're doing for diversity. And also we know that the UN SDG are there that are also going to be implemented by many countries. And finally, there's the economic part of it, right? We know from studies from BCG and McKinsey that companies that have a diverse management and middle management, that they actually have a 25 to 36 higher probability to be economically performant. So, and that's when people say, yeah, but diversity is just a nice to have. No, not really. It's a must have in order to be future proof. And I don't know if you remember him, he was here at WEF, and Goldman Sachs, they have made their own studies to find out, what impact does diversity have. And he clearly says, on the long run, it's just the best thing to do to drive premium returns for the investors. Right, so, but now companies kind of understand, okay, we have to do something, and what do? They go back to the very traditional way of trying to build diversity and inclusion, which is with trainings and workshops. 99% of the Fortune 500 companies in the US and 50% of the middle-sized companies, they do workshops and trainings. Now, the big problem here is there, and that's why I put there a blizzard, is that in studies done by Harvard, by Frank Dobbin, we have found out that actually they don't work. And why they don't work, I don't know if you've ever been in a diversity training, is you go in there and maybe you find it's super interesting, but it's like 2 days later you've forgotten about it. And also, a lot of it is based on unconscious bias. We don't even realize that we're not being inclusive. So, and that is something you cannot train in an afternoon. So the problem is trainings don't work, but they're even counterproductive. Because coming out of a bias workshop, you think, oh, now I'm all, educated and I know how to detect bias, and that creates the expert bias. Then it's even worse, actually. Well, we were asking ourselves, okay, how do we learn today? How can we actually learn inclusive behavior? And one thing is that first you need to be aware of where your unconscious biases is. Second, there's this 10-20-70 model. When you look at how people learn, only 10% they learn from frontal workshops, 20% in like exercises, but 70% of our learnings come from daily on-the-job exercises. And also, as we are all adults and all have a brain, we also need to understand why we have to change. We cannot just be told like little children, right? We have to understand why we have to change. And finally, new behavior you only learn in repetitive small steps. So our big question was when we started out, okay, what kind of tool can we use to transport this new learning, to transport bias awareness? And here comes in language. Language is an everyday tool. We use it and we communicate with it all the time since the COVID pandemic has even gotten bigger, right? We communicate through Teams and Slack and wherever. But we also know that language really makes a big impact. Language builds culture. And if you know there's different languages, you know that with every language, we also build a different culture. And finally, what has been found out by the Technical University of Munich as well as Harvard is that language will a lot influence how you interpret it depending on your own socialization. For example, we know that women are socialized much more with cooperation. That means whenever something is formulated in a very competitive way, they will not feel attracted by that language. Or Generation Z doesn't feel attracted by a language that's very exaggerating, right? Because they're socialized with authenticity. Right, so that's why we said we build a solution with, it's like an AI augmented solution, I would say, integrated into your work process that can help you to become more bias aware. Now, I think this demo doesn't work, right? So I click on the next one, but here you see the pictures. So it's actually a small browser plugin, and while you're writing, it will directly analyze what you're writing. It will detect the bias behind the words that you are using. Then it will show you, so in the second picture, it will show you what is the bias behind it, so you learn about the bias, and then it will give you an alternative how you can write it differently in order to be inclusive with your wording. Finally, you also get analytics about your behavior, so you can actually measure in which bias traps you are falling into. And this not only at a personal level, but at an aggregated level of a company. So companies can actually detect now into which unconscious bias traps they're falling into. So there's a big effect of Witty, what we have seen from our customers. Naturally, they can retain talents much more because through using Witty, you will become more bias aware, you will adapt your behavior and have to, you will have a more inclusive behavior even in real life, right? Because your awareness helps you to come into a room and think, maybe this person is actually gay, or maybe this person, he's a father who's raising his children on his own. So you're being just more aware in general. Naturally, also in marketing, you improve your brand image. We, for example, know that Generation Z looks at inclusion very closely when they look at the ads. And C-level, not so much yet in Europe, but in the US, if you're using the wrong words, this can really destroy your career. So you want to watch out for that risk. And finally, in talent acquisition, as I said, using inclusive language, you will be sure to attract more diverse talent. So just to tell you about our business model, you can buy Witty. You can try out Witty yourself. Please go ahead. There's a freemium there. You can buy Witty off the shelf, meaning you can buy it online with your credit card. This will be rather for the mid-sized companies. And in the end, the Witty Enterprise, for the very large companies, we have special packages because naturally data privacy and IT security is a big thing when there's a browser extension always following you what you're doing. And finally, these are the current customers we work with. It's really funny because they're all in all different industries. It's not really industry specific at all. But naturally, we see that large organizations have a bigger problem with diversity inclusion because they have very traditional cultures. Yeah, that's about us. Yeah, I'll stop here. I just heard the time, right? Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you so much for the great presentation. So you mentioned some of the success metrics that you were able to measure, reduction in the training costs and more diverse applications. Have you been able, or are you planning to measure also the impact on revenue generation or the company success in general? So the hard P&L metrics.
Yeah, we would love to, but that's really hard for us, right? The fact is that we are being one small tool that you need in diversity, equity, and inclusion in order to become diverse and inclusive, but it's just a small part. There's many more other tools that you also have to make sure that they happen. Sorry. Yeah, it's mine. Just put it out, sorry. So, for example, you have to watch out for inclusive recruiting. You have to watch out for inclusive marketing. And finally, that's something that really the companies have to measure themselves. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. So one of the challenges that we keep seeing is, one, it's talent base, it's finding diverse candidates to come in on the front end. But you find that actually improves as you start hiring more diverse people, you bring more, there's more of an interest and all that. A question around, and you said it, the training, you see it, it's that 10, 20, 70 rule. How do you do the follow-on? Like what's the post? So in the enterprise or the mid, one training works for the next few days. What's the long term? How often do you have things go through? What type of cycle do you see with your clients? How often do they want you to come in?
Yeah, so what I think I have to state first is that many companies are currently really concentrating on diversity, recruiting diversity, but diversity is just a fact, it's just a number. You haven't done anything yet with diversity, even if you have a more or less good representation of everyone. What needs to happen is an inclusive company culture. Right? That everyone kind of understands, hey, the diversity that we have, we actually need to bring in all these different opinions and we need to hear them and listen to them. And this is exactly what we want to do with our tool. So maybe companies do have trainings, but once the trainings are over, people need to be reminded on a constant basis, there's a bias there I should think differently in order to kind of change into an inclusive behavior themselves. And that's how you're building an inclusive company culture that really will profit you economically, but also as an attraction in the long term.
I have a question as well. Thank you so much, Nadia, for presenting and creating such a great product. You mentioned briefly about international languages. Let's say the company is increasing their accessibility to technology and thus the team is also very international. How do you deal with different languages being used in the workplace and how do you implement or change your AI model to make sure Spanish, English, German, it's all in the same kind of open language theory?
Yeah, so Witty currently exists in English and German, and we're developing French at the moment. So already that, and it's really hard because even if we talk about English, there's the English that we speak in Europe, in the UK and the US, and it's totally different, right? So I just talked yesterday to a guy from the US, and he's like, do you have all the language related to race? I'm like, race is already a word you don't use in Europe. So it's really hard. It's a big localization thing. And that's also why we have to control the AI we use, because the AI already has all the bias in there, right? But what we look after is we really analyze, we call it the diversity dimension culture, because in language you also transport a lot of stereotypes about culture. So it's the easygoing Italians, it's the lazy French, it's the exact Germans. So these are all words that when combined they already express a lot of stereotypes. And yeah, that's what we analyze and try to combine and solve with Witty.
Thank you so much, Nadia. A big round of applause. I see there's so many questions and so much interest, so please stay around, reach out, ask all your questions also after the presentation. And now last but definitely not least, please welcome Simon Hampel. He is the CEO and founder of Light and will tell us how to slow down, I think, and become still.
Morning, everyone. I'm Simon Hampel. I'm the founder and the chief exec of Sarsen and Light. Light being a program and a platform we've built, a tech platform, helping to bring presence back into your life. Let me just set some context as to me and why we're doing this. Listen, I'm a dad I'm 55 with 3 small children, a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So that brings presence into my life. And my journey's been unusual. I spent my 20s building businesses, and lucky me, it went well, and I lived all over the world. And in my 30s, I lost those businesses, and that was very hard. So what was a good story became a difficult story, and I was very challenged. And then I spent the next 10 years leading charities, NGOs. I took scientists and aid workers into remote parts of the world and did aid work. I took a team across the Gobi Desert, over the Himalayas, down the Blue Nile, through the Amazon. Amazing. And then I ran an international NGO tackling needless blindness. lived in hospitals in southern India, and took this across Africa and Southeast Asia. So I moved into a sense of purpose, from being a leader to being a purposeful person. I understood I could do more with my leadership. And the last 10 years, up until recently, I was running an organisation, or partly running an organisation called Leaders Quest, trying to help build wise, compassionate leadership, thinking about that gap between our cleverness and our wisdom, which feels very important in today's life. And what am I now? I've gone back to being an entrepreneur. I've gone back to my roots, and I'm building Sarsen and Light with a wonderful team, all of us together. And it's about being present. And I say that because, in a sense, I'm a stat that I should be very wary of. I'm a founder of an organisation with a young family. I'm probably overwhelmed and exhausted, and I've got all the challenges of building a business and raising money and finding clients and keeping the team together and running at 100 miles an hour all day and all night. And you know, actually, I'm okay. I feel pretty good within myself. And I recognise that's not an accident. I've taken some time to get here, if I look back at my life, what I charted for you. And actually what I put it down to is being present, is being able to be here, because I notice that when I can be present, I can connect to people in a different way, or I can connect to what's in front of me. It could be people, it could be a challenge or a situation. And of course, if you can do that and quieten that racing mind, crazy thoughts of the past and the future and my lists of to-dos and my anxieties and the things I haven't got right and struggling to get the kids to bed, whatever's going on, actually, I create a bit of a space and a gap because I quieten down. And if I create a space and a gap, I'm not using the energy I'd be using up in the past or the future. So I get energy, I get a bit of space. And I notice that with that, I feel much more resilient to life. My sense is that so many of us are overwhelmed. So many of us are running and running. We've got so much coming at us. How do we build resilience? How do we build that space? Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, talks about in between stimulus and response, there lies a gap. And in that gap is our growth and our freedom. For me, that's the gap, that space that opens up. Of course, once you feel resilient and a bit more spacious and like a sort of an expressive energy that comes into your body, actually, it also gives me a more creative feel. I feel I can find my intuition more because it's opening up for me. And I say all those things because I think that's really why Sarsen and Light exists. And my life's journey is now coming out, like the tributaries of all those strange things I did have come together to form one river that feels appropriate for me now. And the reason I think presence has come into my life is because I feel under practice. When I left the NGO tackling needless blindness, I happened to meet a Zen master Jesuit monk in the chocolate hills of southern India, and he taught me to meditate. Now listen, meditation is not for everyone, but I've been doing it for 14 years every day. I have a practice. I built a habit, and that brings me into a place of awareness and reminds me when I'm not here to be here. And as you can see on the slide either side of me, we're trying very hard to recognize that there are many practices out there. Light exists to remind us why it's important to build a practice, why presence will help and equip us for the day in front of us, but also that there are so many different practices. I was recently with a senior leadership team in Paris, big global tech company, and talking to them about this, about practice and presence. And one of the ladies there said, "Simon, I'm overwhelmed, I'm exhausted, I'm not sure I've got to practice, I'm never present." And we had a really good conversation. And then she suddenly stopped. She went, "Just a minute, when I cut carrots, I'm present." It was really fun. I thought, "Oh, that's interesting. I've not heard that as a practice." And she goes, "No, honestly, I do that most days to come back into myself." And I said, "Well, there you are. Let's try and make this not a happy accident." Because so many of us find our present state, our creative, intuitive state, maybe if we're in the shower, if we're driving a car, if we're washing up, when actually we could bring it into our life if we were lucky enough to find something that we can repeat regularly that actually connects to us. And I say repeat regularly because there's lots of evidence. Developmental psychology talks about doing something for 8 weeks every day, 10 or 15 minutes a day. And if you do, you build a new neural network. You create a new root system. That's amazing. We can all do that. Leopards can change their spots. And that's what happened for me. I built a practice, and I've had it for, as I say, many years. And so with Sarsen and Light now, we are trying very hard, and we're working with companies all over the world. We work with Accenture, with Google, with Pizza Hut in the UK, amazingly, with Cool Planet, a wonderful impact organisation based in Dublin and Ireland, tackling climate change. And all the time thinking about, why is a practice important? How do we bring presence into our life? What is the practice that works for you? Personalise it. Make it relevant so you feel connected to doing it every day. And then helping build a habit. Because it's easy to say, be present, build a habit. But how do you do that? And it takes time and patience. And you've got to recognise you're going to get on the horse and you're going to fall off. And you're going to get on the horse and you're going to fall off. But if we can do it together, if we can do it in small groups, if we can build a platform as you have, where we've got amazing wisdom and advice from some fantastic people I know, then you can lean into it and listen in your own time whilst also doing it together. And that's what we do. We take people on a journey over the course of a few months, and we encourage people to just try, because we recognise the huge difference. And that's what I encourage you all. I wonder who in this room has a practice or feels present. Who feels present now in this room? There's a few hands going up. Nice to hear. And my sense is that it's been a gift for me. I recognise that. And it's sort of amazing because it doesn't judge what I do, it doesn't judge where I go in the world. It's just that I can use it across the breadth of my life. And that, what I think is also important in what we're trying to do as human beings. We compartmentalise. I'll just do this in my work environment. I'll just do this in my family environment. I'll just do this with my friends. Actually, that's not who we are. Presence requires us to be everywhere. So thank you. And if you're interested, reach out. We'd love to have a conversation. We really are passionate about this. We believe in it. We recognise it works and it'll change your life. So please get in touch. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Simon. Questions? I have one. Actually, I would love to understand. I understand it's an app, right? Can you tell us a little bit like what it does?
Yeah, it's a program, and the app sort of underpins it. So the app has all this recorded content, visual and audio, from some amazing human beings that I've been lucky enough to meet over the years. Wise elders, not just, some are very young, but feel old in their soul. And it's there as content, and we take you on a personalised pathway. So we try and understand a bit about who you are, try and find some practices that could be relevant to you, and then take you on a journey every other day so you can try and literally practice, build a habit. And then every week we bring people together to try and do it together. Because if you do it together, there's a sense of accountability, there's a sense of connection, and you feel actually part of a community. And that, we know, is also very helpful.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. Is it on? Okay. For the amazing work that you're doing. And I really love the personalized aspect so that everyone can pick what works. They struggle with meditation, they can do something else. I'm curious, looking at the user data, what are the most popular practices that are perhaps most accessible for people and the best entry point for someone who wants to start with a mindfulness practice?
Oh, it's lovely. Thank you for that question. Gratitude is seemingly one that very many people are drawn to. We've got a lovely gentleman, Matt McCartney from the UK, is one of the elders in Britain, who talks about gratitude and those small moments of gratitude that you can have in the day. And we find that is connecting to a lot of people. Breathwork. There are many people who've tried breathwork, many more who have breathwork ahead of them. It's an amazing way of regulating your nervous system. It's also a way of calming, just generating yourself down and preparing for whatever life is about to put in front of you. So breathwork and gratitude. Tapping is quite an unusual thing. Emotional freedom therapy. It's how we regulate ourselves. And it sounds rather unusual, but it works. And we've noticed people, particularly with anxiety, that are drawn to tapping, or moments that they just need to sort of calm down. Many people tap to sleep, interestingly, just to clear their mind before they go down. So there's a bunch of unusual stuff alongside meditation. We've got a couple of fabulous swim dem crew who basically teach people to swim. And as they say, it's their meditation. They get out into the water and they swim together, and it's just an expression. And another guy who's a bird watcher, who says, I stand in nature, in a city, I look out and I connect. Beautiful.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. I already feel calmer actually just listening to you for 10 minutes. Ready for the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.